Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. My name is Scott Mines, probably better known as HowlingMines here on the internet, and welcome along to my YouTube channel. You probably find yourself here because you have a passing interest in getting involved in Flesh and Blood, the TCG that's kind of taking the world by storm with its popularity across the tables right now. If you don't know who I am a Magic the Gathering content creator, and I have been for a couple of years now. And I've been involved in the trading card game space for about 13 years, and I love it. I wouldn't change anything for the world. And if you, like me, have an interest in Flesh and Blood and you want to get involved, you're coming from other card games, have some experience in the space, well, hopefully this little video series is going to help you get your foot in that door and understand the game a little bit better. We got 3 videos in this series. All of them are available on this channel now at your earliest convenience to kind of give you a gateway into Flesh and Blood, and then to take a little bit deeper along the way as well. This first video in the set is very much nothing but the fundamentals, the absolute basics. We're going to take a look at a couple of cards on the tabletop, inside of Tabletop Simulator, kind of walk you through them, what they look like, what numbers you need to be paying attention to, and exactly how the game works. In the second video, we're going to play a game with one of my local players at a snail's pace. So keeping things very slow, kind of walking through every card as we go, explaining to you what it does, how things are working, all the moving steps, so hopefully you can follow along as we play. And then the third and final game of this set is kind of picking up the pace a little bit more on that. We have a second game, same heroes as the first game, but a little bit faster, a little bit less explanations going on. So hopefully you'll realise you can follow along and you now have a better understanding of what's going on by the time you get to that video at the end. I've been really lucky to have some early results in Flesh and Blood here in the UK, and I love the game to pieces, and if I can do anything to make it grow, I'm going to try and do exactly that. So if you do like this video, you want to see more Flesh and Blood from me, consider subscribing, maybe follow me over on Twitch, HowlingMines, or Twitter elsewhere at HowlingMines as well. Come and have a chat, let me know what you think, and hopefully I'll see you for some more things Magic the Gathering and Flesh and Blood here on the channel very, very soon. Take care and enjoy. So, you may have your claws back. I'm done stealing them now. Cool, cool. So, much like most other card games, we're going to decide who goes first and who goes second by rolling some dice. I grabbed some big green ones that are hopefully somewhat visible on camera, but we'll see. High roll okay with you, Danny?
Sure thing.
Cool. Can you beat 7? You cannot. Get those low rolls out of the way early for the brute play. Exactly, you don't want those for now. So I'm going to choose to go first. I'm going to take a second here to kind of break down in detail that not every hero in Flesh and Blood wants to go first. There is definitely some situations where heroes are built to go second, or maybe they're want the setup turn. They want to be more defensive. There's also another reason to go second we'll talk about in a little bit when we get through this first turn. So not as common and as easy a choice as you might think it would be in some other card games. There's definitely an actual choice to be had in whether you want to go first or second. I'm going to take a second to... no, you know what? I'm not going to sideboard. Let's keep things nice and simple this time around. I'll just run the 60 that I have and not make too many adjustments. So we're going to go first. Very best of luck, Danny. And we're going to start the game by drawing 4 cards. So, I'm going to find... and imagine teaching yourself hotkeys on Tabletop Simulator before you started today and just forgetting them all. Like, imagine being that good at card games. Can't actually do that. So we can do this. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick second to look at some of the cards in my hand. I'm not going to do this every turn because it will be very, very time consuming, but I just want to take a second to kind of talk through some of the things that, Runeblade has access to and some of the things we have going on here. You'll see that we have a really fine mixture of attack actions and non-attack actions. It's really important for us to have that balance because a lot of our cards care about playing the other one to do their maximum kind of thing. We've got a few things here. You'll see our hand is exactly that. We have 3 actions and 1 attack action. So it's going to be quite easy for us to kind of piece together a turn here. That being said, it's really not that simple. You'll find that in a lot of cases, we want to save a card in our arsenal for later. And also, if we attack Danny now, well, they get a fresh hand at the start of their turn because it is the very first turn of the game. So maybe we're throwing away valuable cards and not necessarily getting through any kind of damage in a meaningful way. So it's possible we just want to have a setup turn here and not necessarily throw away too many important cards because we're not really earning any cards from them in exchange for that. So you'll find that a lot of cards in this hand that we have here, a few of them are actually quite valuable to our game plan. Swarming Gloomveil here is a really powerful attack. You'll find that getting it into play early is not always the best. You want to combine it with a few other cards in the deck. Sometimes make some auras beforehand to really leverage the most powerful things it can do. And Mulverian Skies here is one of our best non-attack actions as well. It's going to help us get go again on our cheap attacks pretty easily. It also kind of rewards us for hitting our opponent if they don't block or respect the thing that we're doing. So burning these cards on turn 1, maybe not what we're interested in. Is pretty easy to say, but not necessarily intuitive if you haven't played the game before. So I don't really want to burn too much of my stuff here and let Danny filter their hand and decide what they want to keep. So I'm actually going to take a slightly more high-octane kind of play. Try not to let them block with too many cards and maybe might save my better cards for later turns down the line. So in this particular case, I am going to pitch for 1 resource. We're going to put this Rattlebones into my pitch zone, spend the red that it makes. Play a Tome of the Arknight. Now, Tome of the Arknight, really sweet card. We're going to reveal the top 2 cards of the deck. If I happen to reveal exactly an attack action and a non-attack action, they're both going to go into my hand. And it does have go again, so this action is never going to take my action point away from me. But if I'm lucky, it draws me 2. If I'm unlucky, it draws me 0. So not exactly a free card, but definitely a way that we can score some card advantage and maybe let the rest of our stuff make rune chants. So we have exactly that.
Ooh,
we have
nice.
a non-attack action and an attack action in this case from the top 2 cards of our deck. We have another Swarming Gloomveil and a Oath of the Arknight. So both of these are in fact going to come into our hand, which is really, really beneficial. Unsurprisingly, even a game like Flesh and Blood, a draw 2 is arguably more powerful than it is in some other card games. So that's good. And we got lucky at a spot where it matters. Okay, so in this particular spot, I did not expect to hit on that Tome of the Arknight, and I'm now somewhat confused about what I want to do. That never works. Like, it's just like, you're always like, Tome, brick, do something else to make a rune chant and pass. And instead, I now have to think, because I have more cards in my hand than I thought I was going. So that's a bit of a weird situation to find ourselves. Hey, Domo, how you doing? So I'm going to choose to keep this combat chain open. We're going to play out the Mulverian Skies here. I'm going to choose to try and go a little bit wide and make the most of the fact we gained some extra cards. So playing Mulverian Skies here, it's going to trigger Viscerai's hero ability. We kind of talked about this a little bit earlier on. But if we play a Runeblade card and we've already played a non-attack, it's going to make us a Rune Chant token. So we're going to get to start dunking some arcane damage away really nice and early. So we make our first Rune Chant in this particular case, courtesy of Mulverian Skies. And then we're just going to come in with a Swarming Gloomveil as an attack on this combat chain. So this is going to make me another Rune Chant, because that is how Viscerai works. We've played a non-attack action. This is a Runeblade card, so we get to make another one. This one doesn't trigger just yet. In order for Rune Chants to pop, you have to attack, and this one was made after we attacked. So it's going to be sitting back here for now, and if we attack again, it will trigger. If not, it won't. So Swarming Gloomveil in this case, if we haven't read this text box at home, it cares about how many auras we've made. Can't right-click to highlight the card. I certainly can do at certain points. I'm trying to tinker with production value, Domo, and kind of see what's best. And I taught myself some hotkeys earlier that I've already forgotten, so you'll have to bear with me. We're going to be a little rustic this time around, but we'll improve as we go. I promise. So Gloomveil here definitely cares about how many enchantments we made, and we've made 2 rune chants so far. So we made 1, so it gains go again. It happened to already have that because of Mulverian Skies. But we've made 2, so it gets +1 power this time around, which is actually pretty sweet. So in this case, we've got this Swarming Gloomveil coming in for 4 physical damage, and we've got 1 arcane damage coming in alongside it. If the physical damage hits, we get to make yet another rune chant because of Mulverian Skies. So presenting a nice little early bit of damage here for Danny. Let's see what they want to do about it.
So I'm going to pitch a blue to respond to the rune chant using my Northern Gloves Arcane Barrier.
Okay, so we're spending a resource to prevent this damage from this rune chant. So it's gone, go away, and did not succeed in doing any damage. More than fine. So now we've got the 4 physical to worry about. Wow, Tabletop Simulator does not want to do that, does it?
Yeah, I think it's when their backs back and forth.
It's fine. I figured it out. We'll get there in the end. So 4 physical damage. What would you like to do?
In regards to blocks, I don't particularly want the Mulverian Skies hit trigger, so I'm going to block with 1, 2 cards.
Okay, so Danny choosing to block with 2 cards here, both of which block for 3. So we are going to find ourselves with 6 damage being blocked at this moment. Is pretty cool. We then get our attack reaction steps we talked about briefly before, and if we want to change the amount of damage it's doing with an effect, this is the time for us to do it. For the most part, no. There's not very many attack reactions in Viserai as a class, and I'm mostly fine with this. It's turn 1, I don't want to be burning too many cards if I can help it, truth be told. I'm only being a little more aggressive because, hey, we happen to get lucky off our tome on turn 1. So this is fine. I've got no attack reactions. Do you have any defense reactions?
I have no defense reactions.
Oh, so this damage gets soaked up and no damage gets taken. In which case, I have an action point back, courtesy of all this go again, so I can do one more thing. And I am going to choose to pitch this Oath of the Arknight. It is blue, and is going to leave me with 2 resources left over when I spend one to attack with Rosetta Thorn. So, Rosetta Thorn is my weapon we talked about briefly earlier. It is going to trigger this rune plant. And we have turned it on. We've played an attack action and a non-attack action in this case. So Rosetta Thorn is going to be coming in for 2 physical and 2 arcane. And then we also have this rune plant on top of all of that, which is pretty sweet. So we got 2 physical and 3 arcane coming here.
So, with regards to this game, in terms of rulings, it works on something called layers. So, this is a good example to kind of bring it up. So the rune chant would be the first thing I kind of have to respond with. So I'm going to spend 1 resource to pay for the rune chant.
Yep, no arcane squeaking through.
No. And then this is doing 2 arcane. With regards to arcane barrier, because I have the same health here as Scott, that I can't use arcane barrier 3 in my skull cap. But with regards to, let's say I was 39, I would have the choice to either use arcane barrier 3 here, and that would pay 3 resources, or arcane barrier 1. You can only use it to respond to with whatever arcane barrier you have for those instances of damage. So here I'm going to spend 1 resource that I have floating, an arcane barrier 1. This reduces this by 1, but I'm still going to take 1 arcane damage here. From the Thorn.
Yeah, so to kind of sum that up, you can only prevent enough damage from a single source equal to the number of arcane barrier you have. So down here, unfortunately, with no access to Skullcap, their life total was too high, so they only have arcane barrier 1, which means there is no way they can prevent 2 arcane from the same source. So they have to take 1, then there's 2 physical left over to think about as to whether they would like to put a card in front of this.
So I quite like this card in my hand. I think I'm going to keep it. So I'm going to declare no blocks.
Cool. So Danny doesn't want to get rid of the card they have left over in their hand, which you won't be able to see on the stream, but they've got 1 left over there, which is fine. So no blocks. I have no attack reactions. Do you have any defense reactions?
No, I don't.
No, so just going to take 2 physical damage in this case and go down to 37. So we managed to squeak in a little bit of damage on this first turn. We're now going to close this combat chain. And when we do this, and we choose to close everything down, everything on it will go back to its respective places or to the graveyard if it was played from our hands. All these cards are going to get into the graveyard, and our weapon is going to go back to where it should be. We have no action points left because we didn't give our weapon go again in any particular spooky special way. So there's going to be nothing for us to use these resources on, but that's okay. It's not the end of the world. We did, however, leave ourselves with a card in our hand. So we're going to try and move to Arsenal here, which is the last thing we do in any 1 turn that we play. And we'd like to keep this card for later. We saw earlier that it's a really good one and can be very powerful in certain spots, a very free, cheap, efficient attack. So I'm going to pop this into my Arsenal zone to save it for later. And then we're going to go to the refresh step. Now, because we're on the first turn of the game, this works a little bit differently than every other turn of the game. To try and balance that play-draw dynamic that you see in nearly every card game, regardless of who went first, both players are going to draw back up to their maximum hand size at the end of the very first turn. However, from every turn after that, you will only refresh at the end of your own turn. Now, this kind of gives you that feeling of a fight. When I'm blocking my opponent's attacks, the more I block, the less I have to work with on my own turn to attack them back. I was too focused on preventing damage to get in for chunks of damage myself. That's kind of where the balancing act of this situation comes from. I got to decide how much I want to defend with and how much I want to attack with. But to make sure the play-draw mechanic is not too strong, we're both going to refill on the first turn of the game here, which is why pushing damage on turn 1, not always correct, because your opponent's going to have a full hand to work with either way. So I am going to end my turn here, which means all these cards I pitched are going to go back onto the bottom of my deck. That is how the pitch zone works at the end of a turn. We can put them in whatever order we want to, which is more than fine. So I've got 2 cards here. I'd rather the red be closer to the top, so this is fine the way that it is. These go on the bottom in any order that I like, and I'll refresh back up to 4 cards. Now, this is important because pitch stacking in general, games of Flesh and Blood, unlike other card games, go long enough in some cases to get back to the bottom cards. You'll find that deciding to pay with certain cards and saving them for later so you can draw them again later, really kind of important and really kind of intrinsic to some specific decks in the format. And there's definitely a reward for that. If you can remember where your cards are, how long ago you pitched them, and when you're going to draw them, it means you can put the right kind of cards together on top of each other to set up really big turns later. And you know they're coming because you put them there, which is a really cool, unique feature of Flesh and Blood.
So, also to mention is I also put my pitch at the bottom in the end phase as well. So if I did pay for Arcane Barrier, I also put it at the bottom.
Yeah,
along with my pitch.
Absolutely. So we're going to go over to Danny's first turn of the game here, and they have a trigger at the very start of the turn, courtesy of Findle's Spring Tunic.
At the start of my turn, we put a token on Tunic.
So energy counter
then...
number 1, so we are a third of the way towards a free resource. Sounds good.
And then I'm going to begin my turn by using one of the best brute cards, Barraging Beatdown.
Yeah, this card is pretty sweet and definitely a reason to be brute. So let's take a real cheeky peek at Barraging Beatdown. So this is a brute action. It is not an attack, but it does a thing. It costs 0. Tend to be, you know, pretty good cards that cost 0. The next brute attack this turn gains the following text. If an attack is defended by less than 2 non-equipments, it gains 4 power. Now, we talked about Intimidate before, the keyword that's stapled onto this. Brute going to start knocking random cards out of my hand to make sure that I can't block with them. And Barraging Beatdown going to reward you for doing exactly that. Because if I can't block with cards in my hand, I can't turn that bonus power off. So Barraging Beatdown, really good way to start a turn as a Brute. Mostly because it means that your next attack is likely to be bigger if you can intimidate even more cards. I promise I will get better at TTS in time, folks. I am... what's what I'm going to use? Shit. So this does have Intimidate stacked onto it. So Danny's going to pick a card from my hand at random, and I'm not going to have access to it until my own turn.
With this one.
This one is gone, so we don't have access to it until my turn.
And then we're going to pitch 3 to play Wild Ride. This will leave me with 1 resource floating.
One floating. Let's take a cheeky peek at Wild Ride so we have an idea of what a brute attack actually starts looking like. This costs 2, and it comes in for 6. You'll find that a lot of brute attacks are all about 6s, as we much talked about before. When you attack with it, you'll draw a card and discard a random card. If you discard a 6, it gains Go Again. So this attack can often be big, but if you discard the right cards to it, build your deck correctly around it, it's going to let you go wider than you would be able to otherwise. So we're going to discard a random card from the hand here, which should be really, really sweet.
First things first, got to draw. And there we go.
Cool, so let's pop this Wild Ride back on the combat chain somewhere. I got to scroll out a little. So we've got 2 cards to choose from in the Brute's case, which is more than fine. I imagine both of these are 6s. It tends to be how this arrangement goes, but we're going to discard this one.
So we discarded 6. So this has Go Again, and we'd have an Intimidation trigger.
Yeah, we certainly do. So Reinar's ability kicks in. I am going to have to get some practice in with this. So Reinhardt's ability kicks in. We have another card being intimidated away. Take your pick, Danny.
We're going to go with this one. So
Brute, unsurprisingly, being quite scary in this spot. Plenty of intimidation. So you kind of see how this works together now. Barraging Beatdown is going to make this really large if I don't block with both of the cards I have left. And maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe those are some really important cards that let me have big, powerful turns. The Brute's putting me in this weird spot. I gotta give them the respect and give them the cards I have left and maybe have nothing left to block the following attacks, or I gotta take an absolute boatload of damage to the face. So this is coming in for 10 with Go Again. If I don't give both the cards in my hand to it. So we're gonna take a real cheeky peek at the things that were intimidated away. Just so I have an idea of what my turn might look like, because I'm getting both of those back. And in this case, my turn that's coming up looks like it could push quite a lot of damage itself. There's a good chance maybe that we can, you know, threaten the Brute back with some of our big power cards. So I'm going to take a little bit of a risk. I'm going to choose to not give this the respect it maybe deserves, and I'm going to declare no blocks on this wild ride. Do you have any attack reactions?
Well, you love to hear it. I have no attack reactions.
Cool, I'm going to give up a quarter of my life total and take 10 to the face. We're going to go all the way down to 30 to try and keep the powerful cards I've drawn and have some kind of good turn on the way back. However, Danny still has an action point, courtesy of Go Again, so there could be more damage coming our way.
So I'm going to pitch. Sadly, you missed it. I did have a massive. So I'm going to spend an additional resource using that for 2 to come in with Mandible Claws for 3.
Cool, so we got a little bit of a Mandible Claw action to finish the turn. So it's coming in for 3. This does also have Go Again, but at this point Danny has no cards left in hand. So it's fairly safe for us to assume there's no resources left over. They're not going to be able to pay for anything else. So this is probably the last attack of this turn. And if we were willing to take 10 damage to keep our entire hand, we're probably willing to take 3 more to not give up a card now. I want to save my armor for later in spots that I think it's going to be more important to block really big, powerful cards and not necessarily give it away now. So I'm just going to take 3 here as well and go down to 27.
Understandable. Well, I'm going to close the chain.
Oh, wait, hang on. Did you not discard a 6?
I did discard a 6. It
Yeah,
doesn't go again. I can't pay for
You're
it.
all good. You're all good. I'm being a spanner.
So yeah, unless you have anything, I'll.
Oh no, I would just like to have my cards back in my hand and stop being so intimidated by the big scary brute man.
So I refill, and then
Certainly do. So we're gonna get to start my turn, which means I have all my cards back and I can figure out exactly what it is that I want to do in terms of big setup turns. Now it's time to reveal to our opponent why I took so much damage in the face. They're almost certainly gonna understand why. Just because of the cards that I'm playing, they have to assume I've got a really, really strong hand to finish up with. And that's really, really, a case of learning to play against Runeblade. But we're going to start this turn off on a Mordred Tide. Now, Mordred Tide is a card that will get exactly that reaction from people whenever you play it as a Runeblade if you are Viserai. So this is one of the big mainstays of Viserai as a card. It's very much what the deck is built around until the end of the turn. Anytime I would make a Runechant token, I get to make that many +1 instead. So it's going to be a really solid way of just turbo jumping the amount of damage that we get to do and the amount of Runechants we get to make, which is really important for a small handful of effects that this deck tends to find itself having access to, which is really, really sweet. Definitely something I would recommend holding on to and trying not to block with, as it is one of your big payoff cards for being Runeblade. We now get rewarded a little bit for saving the card in our arsenal that we did later on, as it's a really good place to start here. So I'm going to start by attacking with a Swarming Gloomveil. Now, this is okay, because it's going to gain itself Go Again, mostly because it makes a Runechant. You forgot, Viserai's text box. When we play a Runeblade card, if we've already played a non-attack action, it's going to make a Runechant for us. This time, it's going to make 2, because Mordred Tide is in effect, and it's going to make additional Runechants, which means we've made 2 auras, and that means that Gloomveil is coming in for 4 with Go Again.
Thinking on these blocks, that's pretty good. This turn's only going to get bigger. I'm going to say no blocks here.
We're going to say no blocks here. Okay, well, I have no attack reactions.
Okay.
You take
no
4.
Defense. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go.
Cool, cool, cool. And now I have to think a little bit, because I have a couple of options. I'm intrigued by the fact that my brute opponent doesn't want to block. Makes me think maybe their hand is a bit strong too. I think they can present a lot of damage. Which means I could probably get in a lot of damage here myself. They're not likely to block me very much, which is really interesting. Alternatively, maybe they just think 4 isn't the important number here, and they would rather block the attack they perceive to be bigger. Which is really, really interesting. So I'm going to take a little bit of an unconventional line this time around. I'm going to showcase one of the other really sweet cards this deck has available to it. We're going to close this combat chain and stop attacking for now. We do still have our action point courtesy of Swarming Gloomveil. We're just going to leave this Mordred Tide here as a reminder this effect is in place. So I'm going to pitch a total of 6 resources by pitching 2 blues. And I'm going to funnel them into a Sonata Arcanix. Now, Sonata is a card that we're going to take a second to explain in just a moment. We just have to remember, first of all, that Mordred Tide makes us 2 more Runechants while we play this card, because it is a Runeblade card, and that's what's important here. Now, Sonata is one of the more sweet, cool, unique cards that Runeblade gets access to, but it's also very versatile and very complex, so we'll take a second to break this one down. It's got a cost of XX, which means we can put however many resources we want to into it, and it's going to get more and more powerful based on how much we do. So we're going to reveal the top X plus 3 cards of our deck. In this case, we put 6 resources into this, which means we're going to be X is 3. We're going to be looking at 6 cards from the top of our deck in just a moment. For every non-attack action that we reveal, we get to put an attack action revealed into our hand. And then we'll deal arcane damage to a hero equal to the number of cards that we put into our hand. We're going to have to shuffle our deck and banish this card. So in an ideal world, we're going to see 3 non-attack actions and 3 attack actions. We built our deck to be roughly half of both to try and encourage that to happen as often as possible. And we'd be presenting 3 arcane while drawing 3 cards. Now, it was really expensive to do, but of course, if it pays off, it's a really, really big turn. That's why we took so much damage to enable this. So, time for us to look at the top 6 cards of our deck and see if we can find a nice even split of attack actions and non-attack actions. Slow roll, please. Flip. Oh, not quite. Not quite. We took a greedy look. Unfortunately, that is a whole 4 non-attack actions and 2 attack actions. So not perfect by any stretch. We do, however, get to put both of these attack actions into our hand, and the 4 others will be shuffled in. And we have 2 arcane coming at Danny, courtesy of Sonata Arcanix. So, what would you like to do about that?
I'm not gonna respect the arcane damage.
No respect of arcane damage, I see.
So I'm going to take 2.
Okay, so taking the 2 arcane damage puts you down to 31. So I have my action point back from go again. Sonata's good like that. Then now I have to decide what it is that I want to do in this spot. Because unfortunately, the 2 attacks I hit, they're both red, which makes it kind of hard to pay for stuff. I do think this is a turn that I want to push damage because Danny's been so disrespectful to the damage I've pushed so far. They're interested in keeping their whole hand. It seems really bad for me to have taken like 13 damage and present like 7. So I think I've got to push a little bit. I was obviously hoping to find maybe a 3rd card or a more resource pitch heavy card to pay for some other stuff. Unfortunately, no dice in that regard, but I think we've got to kind of unload the chamber here and put some damage into play. So we're going to go with this Rune Flash in this particular case. Now, Rune Flash is a card we talked about briefly earlier. It would normally cost 3, but it costs less because of all the rune chants that we have. Very disrespectful gamers indeed, absolutely. Which is fine. So it's got go again. It would normally come in for 4, and it costs us nothing because of all these rune chants. The important part, of course, is that while these 4 are coming forward, the 2 that get made behind by Viserai are still here for the follow-up attack. So this is 4 with go again and 4 arcane coming at them. So very much an even split of magic and physical. They get to decide what it is they want to do about that.
So I don't think I can keep this disrespect train going too much longer.
No, continue with the disrespect.
There is now 8 coming at me, and then a potential 4th on the weapon. So,
Indeed, we kept a big old hand by taking a chunk of damage to the face, and mostly because we thought we could present more damage back at you. But up to you how much of it you take.
I'm going to prevent 2 rune chants.
Okay, so there are 2 of these left.
I'm going to take 2 from there.
Cool. So, rune chants, always the top layer. Resolved in this case. So, just 4 physical with go again left to think about.
Well, I hate to do it. I'm going to block with this.
No!
This is what I was trying to save up to play.
So this is a really interesting little card. We'll take a quick look at Alpha Rampage, the card here that Danny is blocking with. This is the Rhinar specialization. We talked a little bit about specializations earlier on that can only be played by the specific hero, not just the class. It's a really big 9 power attack. I mean, look at that artwork. Rhinar having none of anyone's shit. With the amount of word there. So it intimidates, it makes you discard to intimidate again. So big 9 attack, double intimidate attack, which is a really valuable card for Rhinar. So this being the block is super interesting. It means that Danny thinks they have to respect some damage. But they're not going to have enough cards left over to really make this work, so I think they're going to get more value out of blocking with it, which is good information for us. It means that we have an idea about maybe what the other 2 cards in hand might be. Do you have any other blocks?
No, I don't.
Also, I have no attack reactions. Do you have any defense reactions?
I don't.
No, so 4 into 3 means you take 1 point of damage leaking over here, which is fine by, well, everyone except for you. And we are going to do the pretty obvious here. Pitch this Spellblade Assault for 1 resource, and we're going to send in our weapon to finish off the turn, which is going to come in for 2, 2, and 2. We have 2 rune chants left over, 2 arcane because of Rosetta Thorn's ability, and then 2 physical from the sword itself. So a real true split of damage this turn. 6 more coming in. What do you want to do, Brute player?
So, no response to the rune chants.
Okay, rune chants have been dealt with. 2 and 2.
No response to the arcane.
Okay, arcane sinks into your face. Down to 24, 2 physical left.
And I will block with Savage Feast.
I'm going to block with a Savage Feast for 3 in this particular case, which means no physical damage coming through. More than fine. I'm going to close this combat chain. So we did push a good chunk of damage there. Got our Brute player all the way down to 24. Left them with a single card in hand. So, really good turn. Was it worth taking 13 damage ourselves? Hard to know just yet, but we'll see as the game continues. So, going to end our turn. Our pitch stack is going to go on the bottom, and we're going to refresh our hand, and we're going to see what our Brute opponent can do with access to just 1 card.
Well, funnily enough, I'm just going to move to the end of my turn.
Okay.
Unless you have anything. So, I'm going to Arsenal this card, and I will pass these.
This is a really powerful play pattern you'll see in a lot of spots in Flesh and Blood. Danny realised the amount of damage I was presenting was a really big amount. It's going to be hard to recover from taking that much damage in one shot. They chose to instead block as much as they could strategically while saving exactly 1 card for later. This means they can Arsenal a card, and that's going to result in one of 2 things. Either their hand they draw is fantastic, and they get to keep a really powerful 5-card hand over the course of the next turn. They just take all the damage to keep all the cards. Or it means if they have to block defensively this turn too, then they have more cards left over afterwards, which might give them a way to kind of get some tempo back and attack me, even if it's for a very small amount while they're being on the defense. Which is a really, really sweet play pattern you'll find with arsenaling cards and managing resources in Flesh and Blood. Now, our hand is exceptionally intriguing. We drew 2 copies of a very, very complicated card in this particular hand in the form of Become the Arknight. We're going to take a quick look at Become the Arknight. We looked at it a little bit briefly earlier on, but didn't go through the text box. But this is one of the really big reasons to be Viserai. And you're about to understand how complicated it is at a glance. You can only play it as Viserai. You can choose one of the following when you play it. You can either discard a non-attack to go search your deck for an attack, or you can discard an attack to search your deck for a non-attack. Now, this basically is Demonic Tour for the Magic-inclined folks among you. You do basically have access to most of the cards in your deck this way, which means a lot of the hands you draw with Become the Arknight are very, very complicated, because you can discard a number of different things to fetch whatever the missing piece might be, and that means a lot of thought and a lot of options. And you'll find, especially when you draw 2 of them, your hand could literally be anything. It could even be a boat. So there's an awful lot to think about in this particular case. I, as a non-Viserai expert, am sweating externally and internally, because I have no idea what I'm supposed to do with this kind of hand and what I should be trying to fetch here. So we're going to take a brief second to think about this. It's definitely one of the more complicated play patterns of Viserai. You definitely want to lead on Become the Arknight a lot of the time, because it's going to turn on all your other Rune Blade cards to make rune chants as the turn progresses, courtesy of his ability. And I think in this case, my hand is fairly obvious as to what I have to do. The sad truth is I have 1 attack and 3 non-attack actions. If I discard my attack to tutor any of these really big, powerful non-attacks that Viserai has access to, like Mordred Tide that we just played, well, I'll have nothing left to attack with. So if I want to utilise my Become the Arknights this turn, I probably have to use them to fetch an attack. And that makes me think, what do I go and fetch if that's the case? I'm going to take a real quick glance at my graveyard, because I am... And I really wish I'd remembered how to do any of these hotkeys, man. I sat here and was like, yeah, you'll learn. Like, don't worry. And then just failed to remember how any of them work. I just want to take a quick look at what we've used and what attacks are tucked away in the graveyard here. to get an idea of what it is that we want to do. And I do think we have a Swarming Gloomveil left. It's one of our better attacks. There's still one left in our deck that we could play for very, very cheap. It's one of those things as well that, you know, maybe we go for a bigger attack and just dump our hand into playing it. We definitely have a lot of options available to us here. This is kind of where the benefit of being a well-known, well-executed Viserai Mage kind of comes in. You'll know what you want to be doing in these spots, especially in certain matchups, and how exactly you want to be pressuring your opponent. I'm going to figure it out the hard way. I know I want to go get an attack action, so I'm going to start the turn on Become the Arknight, and I'm going to discard the other copy of Become the Arknight. Okay. So I'm going to go take a peek at my deck the hard way with the old search button, and we're going to see what I could potentially go and grab. Now, Rune Flashes and stuff aren't very cheap right now. Neither is this Amplify the Arknight, because we have no Rune Chants. We burnt them all in attacking our opponent last turn. We could grab something like a Spellblade Assault. This is a little expensive to use, but it does generate a bunch of Rune Chants by attacking with it, which is going to help us set up for like bigger turns later on, maybe. So maybe that's an option that we can explore. In terms of other attacks, we could look at maybe something like Meet and Greet, because this is an attack that gains Go Again if our opponent does not prevent arcane damage, which would let us go a little bit wider, potentially, without having to worry about it too much. I think for the most part, however, I'm just going to shoot for my best attack in this particular case, and it's definitely the case that one of the best cards in the deck is Swarming Gloomveil. We should have one copy left over. There are 2 in our graveyard, so I think I'm almost certainly going to go and grab the remaining one of those. Just because I think I like searching for, you know, powerful and good cards. So we're going to go get this Swarming Gloomveil in this particular case and pop it into my hand. Unsurprisingly, we're going to follow it up with said Swarming Gloomveil. Now this is the play pattern for a reason, because playing this card generates us a Rune Chant with Viserai. We've already played a non-attack action, so we get to make one. And that one counts for Swarming Gloomveil's ability. It gains Go Again if we've made one aura, which means I have a way of attacking multiple times this turn, which I wouldn't do with any of the other cards in my hand at the moment. So it's definitely the place to start, and we're going to be coming in for just 3 physical this time. We haven't turned on the second mode just yet, but it does have Go Again.
Okay. I'm going to declare no blocks.
The lack of respect continues for the physical damage from this Rune Blade. I do not have any... Do I not have any? No, I do not have any reactions in this particular case, so you can take 3 if you wish.
No defense reactions, yeah. So, take 3.
Cool, so I think in this case I want to just set myself up for a wider turn. And try and make myself capable of going a bit bigger with a hand that's a little more flashy, shall we say. So I've turned on my weapon. I think I'm going to conserve a card in my arsenal and use the other one to pay for a weapon swing here. So we're going to pitch this Tome of the Arknight, which pitches for 3. We're going to spend 1 of it to come in with Rosetta Thorn. This is going to be 2/2 and a Rune Chant in this particular case. So 2/2 and 1, letting 5 damage off the weapon alone.
Thinking here.
Ease. Brute player, think. Sadly, no deck command for Flesh and Blood at the moment, Domo. That's something I can definitely look into. There is a website to search for Flesh and Blood deck lists called FabDB. That's FABDB. But there's no programmed command for Twitch at this moment in time, mostly because no one's streaming this on Twitch at this moment in time. So if it's something that I continue to do, and we do more Fab content in the future, I'll definitely find a way to get a deck command to work. It just might take me a bit of, finicky progress.
I'm going to novice 1 to the Rune Chant.
Okay, so it takes the Arcane, the Rune Chant goes away.
And then I'm going to pitch 3 for my Arcane Barrier 3 from my Skull Cap.
Okay, no worries. So, interesting to talk about here, exactly how this works. I'm going to steal this Skull Cap to explain, because good like that. We talked about Arcanite Skull Cap a little earlier, having this weird bit of flavor text that sometimes comes up. It has Arcane Barrier 3, which is basically 3 times the amount of Arcane Barrier the gloves provide, but you have to spend 3 to do it. So a blue lets you prevent up to 3 Arcane from a single source if your life total is lower. You'll see that right now, Danny has strategically put themselves to 20 while we're at 27, which means that ability is active. And they're choosing to pitch a blue here to stop both points of Arcane from the sword, something the gloves can't do by themselves. So no Arcane damage from the blade, 2 physical damage left.
And then no blocks on the physical.
Oh, I have no reactions, so you can take your 2.
2.
And I'm going to close this combat chain.
Mm-hmm.
I would then like to move to end and move to Arsenal. We're going to save this one for later, try and have a bigger turn with it down the line. And refill our hand. Pass over to you.
Sure thing. So, start with our Tunic trigger.
Unit goes up to 3, so now there is a free resource tucked away here to remember. It can make 1 resource on command.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to play the other red barraging
Oh,
beatdown.
no!
Seems glued to my hand.
Yeah, so we have another barraging beatdown. This one we saw a little bit earlier on. We do have an intimidate trigger as a result, so the brute is getting a little scary. Please pluck a card from my hand that I will not be able to have until my turn.
Mm-hmm.
Red
And
barraging
now,
beatdown active.
So as you can see with the Viscerai player, you know, cards like Become the Arc Knight let you tutor for all these big cards on deck. We're gonna kind of do the opposite of a complicated turn and play Swing Big.
Absolutely. So this is one of my favorite brute cards. Very much embodies what brute is all about. Swing Big. Again, some real ferocious, chunky card art. This is a 2-cost attack that attacks for 8, which is a boatload of damage. That is a real good rate on an attack in Flesh and Blood. However, if Swing Big doesn't hit, I get to make a Quicken token if I choose to prevent all of the damage. Which is a token that gives my first attack of the turn go again, which is a really valuable resource as Runeblade. I like to be able to attack multiple times, and my opponent giving me a way to do that for free, that's pretty good. That being said, I have to put a lot of my hand in front of this, or a lot of block in front of this to actually stop it from hitting me. And if I don't put at least 2 non-equipment cards in front of it right now, it's actually hitting me for 12. Which is an unreasonable amount of damage, and a very brute thing to do. So I'm going to take a cheeky peek at this card you stole from me and intimidate it out of the way. And unfortunately, you hit a really good one that doesn't do an awful lot by itself, which is a real shame. So I am likely going to scream internally for a moment. And then I probably have to just respect this and soak up an awful lot of damage. And I think if I'm going to be blocking some damage, I should probably be blocking all of it in this case, or at least trying to. So we're going to block for 3, 6, and then we're going to put our Bloodsheath Skeleta in the way as well, as this has that 2 block value stuck on the bottom corner and doesn't blow up until we block with it the second time. So we're going to try and block 8 here.
Sure thing. I have no attack reactions.
I have no reactions either, so we're going to prevent all this damage, and we are going to generate that Quicken token.
Mm-hmm.
Oop.
I'm going to close the chain.
Sure, my armor gets to go back to where it was for now, and has that -1 counter on it for the second.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to pass to you.
Oh, I get my card back. Sweet. But yeah, unfortunately, you see that I kind of had to respect that very large amount of damage there, and it's kind of left me with a very awkward hand that doesn't do much, and these cards don't pitch for much, and they don't really get me anywhere in a meaningful manner, which is super, super unfortunate. But I have to respect the amount of damage dealt by our good friend Swing Big over there. So I'm actually going to make the decision to try and be conservative here, and like maybe set myself up for a big turn again, find a window where I can take a hit to the face from the brute and present a lot of damage again. So I'm actually going to use the sweet little extra text on Grasp of the Arknight here. We kind of looked at this earlier on. This has an ability stapled onto it that says as an action I can spend 2 resources to make a rune chant token. However, it costs an additional 1 if I want to use it and have a rune chant already. Hey Minasar, it's good to see you, friend. Hopefully all is very, very... So we're going to do this and try and set ourselves up for a little later. We're going to pitch away both of these reds and make a single rune chant in this particular case, and keep this card tucked away in my arsenal safe for another time. So that's going to be a really simple turn for us. Set ourselves back up for another turn down the line, hopefully. Good to see you, buddy. Okay. Hopefully everything is okay.
So Start my turn.
Yeah.
Obviously, my tunic is at 3 now, so no more counters for
Yeah,
that.
it is already locked and loaded. Don't need to be charging it up anymore.
So we're gonna pitch 3
Yeah.
to play Wild
We're going
Ride.
on a wild ride. Yep.
So
This one we looked at a little bit earlier. Going to be discarding cards, maybe getting go again, but hitting us for a chunk of damage in the process. So, drawing a card, or we're going to be discarding a card at random. I am going to go with the right-hand side. What does this one look like? Hey, no more swing bigs coming at my face, but this is a 6. So, this Wild
So
Ride
intimidate.
is going to gain go again, and Rhinar is going to intimidate a card away from me. So, steal a card from my hand that I will not have the pleasure of blocking with.
So
It has been stolen.
that.
3 cards remaining. This is 6 with go again currently. Well, we're actually in this really weird spot. If we take a look at this card that got stolen, my hand here is actually really quite solid. This is going to help me present a lot of damage next turn. It's very much what we were looking for when we chose to be so defensive last turn. So I think for the most part, I'm going to be taking a lot of damage to my face this turn and trying to keep as many cards as I can to have the biggest turn possible on the way back. So I'm going to be declaring no blocks on this Wild Ride. Do you have any attack reaction?
I do not know.
I'll take 6 in the face and go to 21.
Okay. So I'm going to pitch 3,
Okay.
leaving me with 2 left as I'm paying for a Mandible Claw.
So this is kind of where these claws shine, much like we talked about earlier on. We discarded the 6 to another attack. These have go again, and with 2 resources left over, the other claw is very likely to come in too. In fact, Danny's got 2 cards in hand, so there's a good chance here this is claw into something else, and that is a lot of damage. So we have to be somewhat respectful of the fact that we might be taking a lot here. Maybe we can't keep our entire hand. That said, I think I'm likely to take both of these claws and reassess after that. So no blocks on the 3 from Mandible Claw here.
No reactions.
Cool, so we're going to take 3 more and put ourselves down to 18.
So rather than the additional claw, when we did here, spending 2 on a Command and Conquer.
Oh no! Okay, so this is one of the big bads that we're going to have to talk about real quick for folks who are not familiar with Command and Conquer. This is a card you will see plenty of if you find yourself playing Flesh and Blood with us. It is a really powerful staple generic that gets played in a lot of decks that don't mind playing generics. It's a 2-cost attack that happens to have 6 power, really solid for these brute decks, and it makes sure that defense reactions can't be played to its chain link, so you can only block with regular old stuff, none of the fancy big blocking defense reactions. More importantly, if it hits me, it's going to destroy everything in my arsenal. Now that's a bit of a problem, because I kind of want the card that's in my arsenal. So the choice I now have to make is, well, do I give up cards from my hand to protect my arsenal, or do I accept that my arsenal is dying and I get to keep all the cards in my hand? And that's kind of the interesting proposition this card presents. The attack in my arsenal is actually kind of important for how big my turn was likely to be. But I might very well be able to live without it and still have some kind of productive turn. However, this Command and Conquer is going to be putting me to 12 life if I take 6 more damage to the face. I don't have an awful lot more life to play with. I could theoretically start blocking with some armor here. I could look to, maybe block with Grasp of the Arknight for 2 and only take 4. But I think if I'm letting my arsenal go, I should just be accepting that I want to save my armor for a more important attack down the line, even though it's very tempting to want to turn off this hit trigger and save the card I've tucked away. That said, I think I just have to accept that my hand is going to be big enough, and I think it's going to pressure you enough to give me tempo. So I'm not going to block here, and I'm going to say no blocks on this Command and Conquer.
No reactions.
Yeah, we're going to take a whole 6 more in the face, down to 12, and this Arsenal card is getting blown up. It was a red meet and greet.
Ooh. Okay, I'm going to close the chain.
A lot of damage from our brute friend over there, but we did take it with our face to try and keep our hand together and have some kind of big, powerful turn.
And I'm going to move to my end, and I'm just going to Arsenal this card.
That is more than fine. So get our card you stole from us back with Intimidate. And we're going to look real close at what our options are this turn, because we have a good hand here. This definitely can present a good chunk of damage. It's just how do we want to sequence it to kind of maximize that? Because weirdly enough, this Quicken token doesn't really help us very much if we're going to play Movrian Skies anyway. Movrian Skies, a card we kind of looked at earlier on. I remembered where the Magnify key is. Look at me, I'm great. It's going to give Go Again, and we kind of waste that if we use it at the same time as we use this Quicken token to give stuff Go Again. Which is a bit of a shame, but playing an all-attack action does help us turn on all our other stuff, all our other effects that we care about. And I think realistically we're in a position where turning on the stuff is the important part. So I'm going to accept we kind of waste this Quicken token in order to have the best turn that we can. So we're going to play out this Movrian Skies onto the combat chain. So we are going to have the next Runeblade attack action having Go Again. If it hits, it will make a single Rune Chant token. We are then going to pitch ourselves a blue Spellblade Assault, of which we will spend 2 resources. So we have 1 left over to play a red Spellblade Assault. Now, this is going to have Go Again in a lot of ways. Sadly, the Quicken token, not optional. It does have to blow up. We don't get the choice. But red Spellblade Assault here, it not only comes in with a Rune Chant, because we had 1 left over from before, it makes 2 from itself, and Viserai also makes 1, because we already played a Runeblade card. So 4 physical and 1 arcane coming in, and we get to make a whole 3 more Rune Chants behind, tucked away. Ethan, thank you for the follow, friend. I appreciate that. Welcome to the channel. So 4 and 1 arcane. If it hits, I'll make another Rune Chant, and we have 3 made behind, and we have plenty of Go Again.
Intriguing. I'm going to. I think the best way to do this is pitch a blue for the Rune Chant.
Okay, so spending 1 of the blue to prevent the arcane damage that's coming at you. Yep, no worries.
And then
4 physical.
It's a shame we're not going to get the extra block out of this, but I'm going to also use the Arcanite Skullcap.
Yeah, burning that Skullcap a little early to stop this hit trigger from Movrian Skies does mean it's going to be harder to get value later on, but sometimes that's a necessary evil. So blocking all 4 here, stopping any damage going through, no extra Rune Chants being made. That is fine. In this particular case, I have to close this chain, so you're going to get your Skullcap back if you happen to lose life real fast. But I do have to close the chain to play another powerhouse that Runeblade has access to and lead on this Revel in Runeblood. This is a card that is kind of a very new addition to the class, but it's definitely one of the more powerful things you get to do in Runeblade. If we've played both an attack and a non-attack, it's going to make 4 Rune Chants by itself, but at the end of the turn, we lose all of our Rune Chants. So we've got to do something with them, or we lose them. However, it will make 4. Viserai is going to make 1, so there's 5 more Rune Chants going onto the stack here. Which means we're going to have a total of 8 when all is said and done, and this Revel in Runeblood has resolved. And then we're just going to spend this resource and send in our Rosetta Thorn. So this is going to be 2 and 2 from Rosetta Thorn, and a whole 8 Rune Chants as well. So good 12 damage from our weapon, plenty of magic damage. What do you want to do about it?
Never changes, Revel. Right. Oh, this is... Okay, we're going to keep up the greed, I guess. I'm going to spend 2 on these Rune Chants.
Okay, so stopping 2 of them leaves 6 left over.
I'm going to take 6.
Okie dokie.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Rune Chants dealt with. 2 and 2.
So, I'm also going to do no response to the Arcane.
Okay, puts you to 10.
Take 2. And then... is it worth just taking it? I'm like... You know, while I have the final bit of value, again, maybe this is where I should have not blocked with it earlier and I'd have got more out of this, but I'm going to put the 1 in front of this.
Yeah, definitely get a little punished for using this aggressively on the last attack, so our damage is still sneaking through here. But definitely a valid block, no worries. Get your value while you can. I have no reactions, and you'll fall down to 9. Rosetta Thorn is done. Interesting to see the Tunic not being used to pay for a Rune Chant, which is kind of shocking to me, but maybe they need the resource for something here. She's likely just to have a really big turn on the way back, so hopefully we don't get flattened too much by these 2 cards in hand and 1 card in arsenal. That being said, we are done here. Our big push turn back did what it could. We're going to refill, and let's see what the Brute has to say about letting us have another turn.
Well, like you acutely pointed out, we do have the tunic, so I'm going to float the resource from this.
Okay, activating the ability to generate a free resource.
Pitch 2, and then you'll love to see it. An Alpha Rampage, discarding this 6 from my hand.
Hey, Domo. So, in this format that we're playing, Classic Constructed, you'll find that games can take like 50 minutes, depending on what kind of decks you're playing. The round timer at a competitive level is 50 minutes for this format, and it is a best of one game. We kind of preemptively sideboard with our equipment and our decks in general before the game begins, mostly because the games are so long. So yeah, very much a best of one game, kind of fixes a little bit of the best of one problem, but the games go quite long because there's a lot of decisions and a lot of moving pieces. Speaking of decisions and moving pieces, this Alpha Rampage is about to put my face in.
2 Intimidate
Very
triggers.
carefully saved. So we talked about this a little bit earlier on. 2 Intimidate triggers from this, because 1 from Rhinar, 1 from itself. 55-0, my friend. 5-0. 2 cards from my hand being stolen. 9 big old raw chonky damage coming at us here from this Alpha Rampage, which is pretty bad. The cards that were stolen from us were also kind of good. But to be fair, this is about the best case scenario for us, honestly, because those 2 cards actually let us have some kind of turn on the way back, which maybe we could have like not been lucky enough to have if we hadn't been intimidated slightly differently. So we've got to consider how much of this we want to take. We are on 12. 9 damage is a lot, and keeping these cards doesn't make our turn much better, to be honest. So we're probably just on damage prevention mode now. So I'm just going to block 6 of this with the other 2 cards that are in my hand. Do you have any reactions?
No reactions.
No, so 3 damage does leak on through. I fall down to 9 as well.
And then I'm going to close the chain.
No worries.
And pass to you.
All good. So my 2 intimidated cards come on back to me. And we have a really simple turn, because we tried to present as much damage as we could off of a 2-card hand here. Having to respect Rhinar, we're just going to pitch this blue and spend all 3 of it on a raw Amplify the Art Knight for 6.
Nothing flowing. No go again. Okay. Just thinking what I'm doing here.
Absolutely. So some things to think about for sure.
9.
Amplify here, a really interesting card, kind of like we were talking about. Gets cheaper when we have Rune Chance. Unfortunately, we burnt through all those last turn, so keeping it and paying the cost the hard way, not really what you ever want to be doing with this card, but acceptable here to just kind of push 6 damage when our opponent's on 9.
I'm going to block 3 of this.
Interesting. Okay, so wants to keep as big a hand as possible, but doesn't want to take 6. Interesting. Yeah, unsurprisingly, I have no reactions. I'm out of cards, so just take the 3.
1, 2, 3.
Puts you to 6. Getting into danger territory here. I am, however, passing back over to you.
I'm gonna put our counter on Tunic. We may never get back to 3.
You might not get 3 more turns, but we'll see. We are both kind of low at this point.
Pitching 3, playing a Smash Instinct.
Okay, so Smash Instinct, a card that may be worth explaining too. Very much like the bread and butter style attacks of Brute. Costs 3 to play, but just has the Intimidate kind of stapled onto it, and attacks for a various amount of damage. The yellow one here coming in for 6, the red one attacks for 7, blue one attacking for 5. So quite a lot of raw damage and stealing a card away, which can be really quite impactful. So coming in for 6 in this case, off the yellow one. We are getting intimidated, so we're going to knock these cards over real quick, and Danny will pluck one out.
Hope we hit a good one.
Okay, so 1 less card to block with. You hit probably the worst one for you, because you saved my blue, which is probably what I wanted to pay for stuff next turn anyway. That said, I really can't afford to take that much damage here. We are running out of life, and I don't want to have that many cards to play with. Really, I just kind of need to have the best turn I can. Thankfully, this card here, Rattlebones, is going to let me do that by keeping very few cards to kind of have a really good pushback turn. So in this particular case, I'm just going to find myself preventing damage with cards from my hand. Again, I want to save my armor. If I really have to use it to stop something important, I'd rather take a little bit of damage first. So we're going to block 5 in this particular case.
Okay, okay.
We're going to take ourselves 1 damage.
No reactions or anything. Close the chain.
Down to 8.
And I will pass to you.
Cool. Okay, so we get to keep our card back from Intimidate, and we get to show off a really sweet design here, something that's very unique. So Rattlebones is a card from Runeblade, and it's a card that definitely excites me. So we're going to pitch 3 from the blue that we got to keep, and we have to spend 2 of it on this Rattlebones. So let's take a look at this big payoff card from Crucible of War. It costs 2 to use, and I get to banish a Runeblade attack from my graveyard and play it again this turn. If I've dealt arcane damage, I could actually play this as an instant if I wanted to not have to have an action point to use it, but it does have go again, so it's going to give me that action point back one way or the other. So I get to kind of rebuy an attack from my graveyard this way, which is a really, really sweet thing that Runeblade gets to do, and basically nobody else. The choice here, really kind of easy, to be honest. We're going to go find one of those Swarming Gloomveils that we played earlier on. We would like to replay it. It is definitely one of our better cards and plays very, very well when you're low on resources, like when you've just paid for a Rattlebones, for example. So in this case, we're going to replay that Swarming Gloomveil. Viscerai is going to kick in because we have played a non-attack action in the form of Rattlebones and make us a Runechant, which means that this Swarming Gloomveil is for 3 and it has go again from its own ability.
Oh, having the one floating here is very big.
You saved my blue for me.
I certainly did.
The one floating definitely here, in case you missed it, represents a weapon swing afterwards, which means there is still more damage coming, which means Danny knows they can't just take all of this damage, because it would kill them if they did. In for 3, has go again from its own ability. Let's see how Danny wants to try and navigate this with only 6 life to play with.
This is, as we say in the business, rather unfortunate. I'm going to block 3 here with a
blocking 3. So I have no reactions in this particular case. So I'm assuming you have no reactions either. Damage gets blunted off, and they kind of nullify each other. But as we talked about, I'm going to spend this last resource. We do have an action point back. So in comes Rosetta Thorn. For 2, 2, and 1, we get that extra 2 arcane damage. We've played a non-attack action and an attack action. Yet another thing that Rattlebones is really good at doing, because it's a non-attack action that finds you an attack, so it gets you that little balance to turn on your weapon. So 2, 2, and 1 from Rosetta Thorn, presenting 5 of your 6 remaining health.
So I do have to think here, because I have the chance to accidentally kill myself.
I understand.
And it's like, is it worth it? How are we navigating this?
Tough one. You're in a bit of a bind, but if you can keep much of a hand together, I'm in a bit of a bind on the way back. So
exactly, it's like I have the potential here to push a lot, or if I whiff, I may accidentally close the curtain on myself. So I need to make sure I'm navigating this properly. Still have a couple non-attack actions in deck. So I think, what would I do? Ooh, it's a little scary.
Little sketch.
I think I'm going to play it safe. So I'm going to pitch this Beast Within for a Runechant, and then one of the arcane barriers.
Okay. So preventing the Runechant and preventing one of the Rosetta Thorn. That is fine. So taking 1 arcane there.
Yep. And then
2 physical left over.
I'm going to park my shoes in front of the...
Yeah, makes sense. Finally starting to earn some of the armor here to try and keep cards in hand, which is a play pattern you'll kind of see a lot towards the end of games. Makes sense. It's a -1 counter on those scab skins, so they're only blocking for 1 next time. But not bad for a 2-card hand from us. Definitely managed to achieve quite a lot by blocking with 2 and keeping a 2 behind. Not going to complain. Away it goes. We will draw a fresh hand at the end of the turn and see what Danny managed to keep with the 2 cards they saved themselves and a card in Arsenal.
So a little painful, especially considering you didn't Arsenal a card, but we're going to come in with the second Command and Conquer.
Okay, so we have another Command and Conquer here, which is almost certainly going to be the only attack. It's very hard for Brute to do anything that gives this go again. Talked about this card earlier, definitely really good at preventing defense reactions and also blowing up cards in Arsenal, but in this spot very much just a raw 6 damage and not a whole lot else. My hand here is actually super strange, in that it can theoretically do a lot and also might not do anything. Which is a very awkward spot to be in. Makes me wonder how much I want to save. At the very least, I know I can turn on Rosetta Thorn, but maybe that's not good enough. It's tempting, because Rosetta Thorn here is going to start leaking 1 damage most turns, because it's hard to stop both Arcane, and our opponent is really low, so leaking damage is quite valuable. But only attacking with Rosetta Thorn and not an awful lot of pressure otherwise, like a very blunt blue attack, is not particularly good in any way. So we have a bit of a dilemma. I think I know how I want to navigate this, and I think I'm just going to put a little bit of armor in the way of this Command and Conquer to try and keep a life buffer, and we're going to try and get a little tricksy and maybe confuse our opponent into accidentally killing themselves during our next combat chain. So, going to be a little safe, going to earn some armor from me to make sure there's not suddenly some effect I'm not sure about here that just kills me out of nowhere. I want to try and save my skull cap until I'm lower than my opponent if I can, so I'm just going to block with Grasp of the Arknight here for 2 and nothing else.
Okay, that's fine.
We're taking 4 of this, puts me down to 4. Grasp will get a counter.
Does turn that skull cap on.
Certainly does.
So I'm going to close the chain.
Okie dokie.
And then I'm going to Arsenal a card and pass.
Alright folks, it's time to get a little fruity and a little complicated in this particular case. So we have to be very careful about how we sequence this, but this turn should be very cool and definitely demonstrate some of the sweeter things Viscerai is capable of doing. So we're going to start things off by pitching this blue Movrian Skies, because we need it for resources. We're going to spend 2 of it. And we're going to come in with a blue Spellblade Assault. So we kind of looked at this card briefly earlier on. This is the blue version. It is a lot smaller, pitches for more resources, but attacks for less. It is 2 physical, and it makes itself 2 Rune Chants when it comes into play. So we're going to have 2 Rune Chants tucked away back here.
This is certainly going to be a turn. 2 chance to do. Got you here.
Nobody spoil the surprise.
Unfortunately, I may have an idea, a slight incline about what's going to happen. I just hope it's not Revel. So I'm going to block 3 here.
Okay, so blocking the physical damage, that's fine. It is time for us to do one of the more complicated things Deck is capable of doing, and that is time to use My Shoes, a very, very complicated piece of equipment called Spellbound Creepers. We're going to take a quick second to kind of look at this one together and explain to you how it works. As a once per turn instance, so I can do this at any time I have priority, like now, for example, I can pay a resource to put a bind counter onto My Shoes. It then lets me play my next non-attack action as though it were an instant. But I can only activate that ability if I've attacked or defended with an attack action this turn. The downside of this is that if at the end of my turn it has more counters on it than the amount of arcane damage I did, it blows itself up. Yeah, Wall of Text.boot is definitely the way of putting this. So it's hard to keep itself alive, but it's going to let you cheat on spots where you maybe shouldn't be able to attack twice. So let's show you what it is that this is capable of doing. We're going to spend this resource, in this case, to activate Spellbound Creepers. So we're going to have that counter put onto the shoes. And if we don't deal any arcane damage this turn, My Shoes will blow up. However, we can play our next non-attack action as an instant, which is going to be Sonata Arcanix. Now, let me explain exactly why this works the way we want it to. We kind of talked earlier on about how Go Again is shorthand for, if this card resolves, gain 1 action point. Now, even though we didn't have an action point coming back to us from Spellblade Assault, our shoes let us play this as an instant, which means we didn't need an action point to play it. That does not stop it from having Go Again, which means if this resolves as an instant, we're going to get our action point back, which, well, that means we get to keep doing things over the course of this turn. We also get to do the thing that's written on the card. So we're going to look at the top 3 cards of our deck here for Sonata Arcanics. If we happen to hit an attack and a non-attack, we can put one of them into our hand as an attack and deal a point of Arcane. So let's take a look at 3 cards. Attack and non-attack. So the Runic is going to be coming into my hand. There is a point of Arcane coming at you.
Right. Now I need to think. I'm going to pitch for the Arcane. Because it's just one, I can use my Northern Gloves to prevent this.
So I'm going to banish this now to make sure I don't forget. But I do have an action point, which is the important part of this situation. So I'm going to close this chain to clear things up a little bit. And I'm then going to play a second Sonata Arcanics. This one is going to make me a Rune Chant from Viserai, because I've now played a non-attack action this turn. And I get to do this again. Take another cheeky peek and see if I can find a little extra gasoline from the top of my library. So,
still 0.
1, 2, 3. Certainly can.
Yep.
The question is, which attack would I like to take here? I have a blue Spellblade Assault and a red one, which is interesting. I can generate more resources if I prefer, or I can attack for more damage if I prefer, which is an interesting little trade-off. That being said, looking at my hand, I think there's a good chance that my next attack is going to be just Rosetta Thorn regardless. It's kind of hard to pay for anything else, because the attack we hit off the first Sonata is red. It means I really can't afford to pay for a 2-cost attack here. So I'm going to choose to take the red Spellblade Assault and have 1 Arcane floating at you yet again.
I'm going to respond to the Arcane again with my Arcane Barrier.
Yep, no Rune Gloves once again going to prevent that point. Going to shuffle itself back into the deck and exile the Sonata. So we've still got our action point. Go again from Sonata Arcanics being super, super powerful here. And it does mean this turn plays itself fairly simply from here. We are just going to pitch this red Runic Reclamation to attack with Rosetta Thorn for 2, 2, and 3.
Okay. Just thinking here. 2, 2, and 3.
So presenting ourselves with 7 damage here into 5 life. We do know at least 1 Arcane is being prevented from the remaining floating resources, but just trying to pressure as best we can in a situation where both life totals are actually quite close and quite tight.
So, prevent 3 of the Rune Chants.
Okie dokie.
And
so,
then
that's dealt with.
Yeah. And then prevent 1 of the
Arcane from the Thorn.
Yeah.
Sure. So you got 1 Arcane left over, which you're going to take. 2 physical damage left.
This is very risky. This is gonna be really funny, but I'm gonna block 1.
Okay. I think it's actually kind of clever. This turns my skull cap off, which is definitely a relevant number at this moment in time. So yeah, no reactions from me. You can take your 1 and go to 3. And I will attempt to move to Arsenal. And Arsenal, a card that could be anything. It could even be a boat.
Sure thing.
And refresh and see whether or not the brute can put me under enough pressure that I can't any card.
So I kept mentioning there's a chance I accidentally kill myself. So you guys are gonna see what this is. So I'm gonna float 1 from my Phanos Wing Tunic.
Okay.
This is the reason I didn't block with it. I'm gonna play this card, Blood Rush Bellows.
Okay, so this is a really big payoff to be brute. So let's take a real quick look at Blood Rush Bellow. One of the more powerful cards this class has to offer. It only costs 1, which is kind of perfect to play off of your Frindle Spring Tunic. There's an additional cost to play it. You got to discard a random card. Now that could be good. It means that you're getting an extra intimidation from Rhinar to put us under a lot of pressure. It's going to mean that all your brute attacks gain +2 this turn. The important part is, if your discarded card has 6 or more attacks, you draw 2 cards and it gains go again. The problem being, if you do not discard a 6, you spent your action point on Blood Rush Bellow and have nothing left to do. So this represents an awful lot of damage if we can draw 2 cards and gain go again. But if there's a miss, this game could be very much over. So
this is the card I'm discarding. So this is
Oh no.
I'm quite low for this.
Alright, so we get to really talk about real roulette situations here. So unfortunately, only card left in hand was a 6, so we are going to be getting to draw 2 cards and getting our action point back. But Beast Within, a really sweet design for Brute, but definitely a dangerous one here. If it's put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the combat chain, you know, like being discarded for an effect, for example, you got to banish the top card of your deck and lose a life. If it has 6 or more attack, it goes to the hand. Otherwise, you have to repeat that process. This is not optional, and so if there is not a 6 in the top 3 cards of Danny's deck, they're going to die to their own cards. So, spin the wheel. Do you get free card advantage, or do you get death? Oh, no. 2, 1.
Oh, and then I just...
Yep, you die to your own trigger.
Oh, no. So this is certainly the, like... 1-2 punch for Brute, and it's a very good combo, but...
What a shit way to go.
Just a little late in the game. Oh, man. Yeah, my 6s were quite a bit off.
That is a very anticlimactic but somewhat hilarious finish to what was otherwise quite a close game. Beast Within, not without risk for your free card advantage, and unfortunately, falling to 3... not blocking with that Tunic, and then eating too many Beast Within hits is going to mean that the Brute falls to the Rune Blade in this particular case. Feels bad. What did you think of that game, Danny? How did it feel?
Yeah, so there was certainly a lot of really cool lines of play. I like playing against the Rune Blades. Viscera is one of my favorite heroes for those kind of explosive turns, you know. It's like you got DT in your deck, you can kind of do some really complicated decision trees. And trying to... I spend a lot of the game trying to balance turning off your skull cap, so my attacks would kind of gain that extra value. So it might have seemed like I'm just taking some hits without thinking about it, but it's kind of a really cool back and forth when both of you are playing Skullcap.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely some reason to start balancing your life total and try and find like a window to stop your opponent gaining some extra advantage from their armor blocking for more, which is really commonplace given how popular Arcanite Skullcap is. So that was a really nice little slow demo game where we kind of talked about everything in detail as we went, kind of broke things down. We're going to have one more game tonight, and we're going to run things a little more, shall we say, mechanically. So less stopping and reading of cards. I'll highlight over stuff and magnify where I can, just to kind of make sure you can glance over stuff you might not be able to read. But we'll try and play this out as more of a traditional pace this time, to kind of give you an idea of the thought process and thought trees. Maybe streaming doesn't lend itself to that quite as well as tutorials do. But I think it'll be kind of interesting to play something a little more, a little more quickly, a little more to the point. And see if people that have been chilling with us tonight can maybe follow along after having a little bit of guidance and watching a game in its entirety. So let's do that.